This presentation will be presented by Sarah Flick, Jessica Baird, Jane Shutter, Emily Hone, and Dante Navarro. The study we based our project off of is called Decreasing Excessive Media Usage While Increasing Physical Activity, a single subject research study by Karen Larwin and David Larwin. Obesity is a serious epidemic among children and adolescent children. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has stated that behaviors such as eating high-calorie, low-nutrient foods and beverages, lack of physical activity, and high engagement in sedentary activities such as TV and using other forms of entertainment such as phones and surfing the web have an influence on weight gain and obesity. The CDC has reported that the number of obese children and adolescents has tripled since the 1980s. Today, 13.7 million children and adolescents are obese. The question is, why? What has changed in the last 40 years? I think we all can agree that a lot has changed over the years. But what change in society is increasing the rates of obesity? Several researchers and scientists have attempted to answer this question. Studies have suggested that one of the main causes to rising rates in obesity is the increasing usage of media. They defined media as television, internet, video games, and cell phones. This certainly makes a lot of sense. However, there are also several studies that dispute this claim. These studies did not find a relationship between the usage of media and obesity. This probes the question, what else could cause the rate of obesity to triple? Finally, in 2001, D. Kunkel explained that the relationship between obesity and media use is explained by what is being watched. Kunkel discovered that the average child sees 40,000 television commercials per year that are food-related advertisements, establishing a relationship between media usage and the rates of obesity. In light of the relationship with obesity and media, in light of the relationship with obesity and media television, the American Academy of Pediatrics has recommended that television is limited to 1 to 2 hours a day. This, however, does not take into account other forms of media. The Kaiser Family Foundation reported that the average child spends 6.5 hours a day on various forms of media. Because of these alarming statistics and the rise of obesity, several studies and researchers have attempted to reduce the amount of media usage while increasing physical activity. These researchers have found success by requiring children to engage in a physical activity in exchange for access to media. For example, Jason and Brackshaw in 1991 conducted a study for an 11-year-old girl. The duration of her physical activity was tracked, and then she was rewarded with the same amount of time with media. This had an amazing effect. After 5 weeks, the amount of time the participants spent on media decreased. There was also an increase in physical activity. This study was successful and resulted in a lifestyle change. The 11-year-old participant maintained these behaviors 17 to 18 weeks after baseline. The participant, as a result, lost 20 pounds in 72 days. Jason and Brackshaw suggested that the results of this study were the byproduct of response competition. By increasing the amount of physical activity, the amount of time used for media automatically decreases. The study conducted in this project incorporates principles from Jason and Brackshaw, such as the contingency between physical exercise and media usage as a reinforcing consequence. Jason and Brackshaw, however, did not attempt to increase physical activity. The results imply that we can increase physical activity by making media usage contingent on the engagement of physical activity. This present study is designed to answer this question. Is access to media a reinforcing consequence that can increase physical exercise? The goal of this study was designed to increase physical activity while decreasing media usage for a 14-year-old girl. Media access was made contingent on physical activity and acted as a potential reinforcer. The main focus of this study goes beyond the goal to increase physical exercise and increase media usage. The main focus was to produce socially significant outcomes by altering the participant's lifestyle. By increasing physical exercise, the participant will have more academic success, reduce risk for various diseases such as diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease, as well as depression. It is also a great way to control weight. The second focus of the study was to reduce the amount of time spent using media. The principle used for the study is differential reinforcement of other behaviors. This simply means we are reinforcing any form of physical activity over the usage of media. It is critical that we discover technologies and procedures to lower the rate of obesity in children and adolescents. Can we increase physical activity, decrease media usage, and alter lifestyles by using media as a reinforcer? For our replication project, we will be answering this question.
The participant of the original study was a 14-year-old female who was described as 5'2" and 135 pounds. She was prescribed to take part in the study by her physician and by her counselor. The main reasons that they chose her for this study was because that they wished for her to engage in increased levels of physical activity, to deal with boredom that she was experiencing, and as an answer to the complaints about unhappiness she expressed regarding her levels of physical fitness. The participant agreed to the challenge of participating in the study because she was unhappy with her body and with recent weight gain. And she admitted that she enjoys time on the internet, chatting with friends, and cell phone communication, and that those could be great motivators for her exercising. As an apparatus, the Bowflex tread climber was chosen in the study because it was already available in the home of the participant and was suitable to provide a form of exercise that was not limited by weather conditions. The tread climber is a hybrid of a treadmill and a stair climber. The tread climber has the ability to record linear distance, vertical height climbs, speed, resistance, heart rate, and calorie burn during each use. These outputs were used to track specifically the linear distance covered and speed of travel for each session. In addition, the participant was instructed to record a body mass composition (BMC) measurement every 3 days. This was measured using the Tanita BC533 InnerScan body composition monitor. This device measures body weight, BMC, muscle mass, and water mass. The InnerScan was placed in an accessible location in the home, and the participant was instructed on the proper use of the instrument to obtain appropriate BMC measurements. Other participants that were involved in the study included the child's parents, who served as the coach and monitored the child's adherence to the program requirements, the child's data collection in regard to the target behavior, and awarded consequences for successful completion of the target behavior. A research assistant also assisted the parents in implementing the program and monitoring the child's data collection activities. The research assistant verified the activities were completed as specified and reinforcements were received or denied. This strategy was employed based on the reasoning that increasing accountability for project activities would increase the likelihood that the participant would follow the project activities through faithfully. The parents were required to monitor the child's daily treadmill activity, daily internet usage, daily phone usage, and BMC readings, and confirm the accuracy of the data collection form. The research assistant provided the child and the parents with instructions on how to use the form and monitored their data recording. A changing criterion design was used in the study. The target behavior was walking on the tread climber, measured in miles traveled. The specific primary goal for the present project was to increase the number of miles that the participant walked on the tread climber. The duration of the project was 7 weeks. The baseline stage lasted for 2 weeks, treatment 1 phase lasted for 2 weeks, and treatment 2 phase lasted for 3 weeks. Follow-ups were conducted at 5 weeks after, and again at 1 year after cessation of the formal intervention. For the baseline stage, of the present investigation, the participants' activity on the tread climber was monitored and recorded on the data sheets for a 2-week period. The participant was also asked to record internet usage and phone usage in minutes during the baseline stage. The target behavior was examined in terms of frequency, speed, and distance traveled. Frequency was recorded in terms of numbers of sessions per week that the tread climber was used. Speed was based on the participant's choice of miles per hour setting on the tread climber, and distance was recorded in terms of how many miles were traveled on the tread climber during each session of use. Once the target behavior was recorded, it was considered to have been completed for any individual session. Reinforcement for performing the target behavior was provided on 3 levels during the course of the 2 treatment phases. For the first treatment phase, the participant received 1 hour of daily, non-school related internet time for every mile walked on the tread climber. For the second treatment phase, the participant received 1.5 hours of daily phone and/or internet time in exchange for 1.5 miles walked per day. For each treatment phase, the participant was encouraged to walk on the tread climber each day, at least 5 of the 7 days of the week. If the participant chose not to exercise on a particular day, the participant was not allowed any internet time during treatment phase 1 or phone or internet time during phase 2 for those days.
In the original study, the graphs show that the participant met criterion for 11 of the 14 days in treatment phase 1, with 2 days above the set criterion and only 1 day below. Criterion for treatment phase 1 was set at 1 mile walked per day. Additionally, in treatment phase 2, she was at criterion for 9 days and above criterion on 10 days, and below criterion on 2 days, with the criterion set at 1.5 miles walked per day. The original study did not include contingency for speed of walking. However, the participant monitored and recorded walking speed. This data was added in the original study's results. The original study included data on BMC, the body mass composition, across baseline and treatment phases. The participant was instructed to record BMC every 3 days using the Tanita BC533 Interscan Body Composition Monitor. Due to the inaccessibility of the device, we did not include this in the replication study. However, the participant in the original study had a total BMC decrease of 3.2 pounds. Finally, the original study examined the usage of non-homework related internet and phone usage. The participant in the original study had a steady decline in internet and phone usage across all 3 stages of the study.
During the design, the design is a change criterion. And one characteristic of the change criterion design employed in the present investigation, as stated by the original study that we were looking at, it does not rule out extraneous events. So that may account for some behavior change. So with that, a health problem or a health problem of some kind can arise, and that can affect how the behavior is changed. As well, the design was a single subject. Single subjects are hard to generalize to making the outside area, which can limit the study's generalization. Another limitation of this study was the motivation. During phase 1, the internet usage was the only thing used to motivate the participant. During phase 2, after every additional half mile after the first 1.5 miles walked, the participant would receive 30 minutes of phone time without internet usage. This increased her walking time, which then limits us to know what was actually the motivating factor for her change, for her increase in walking. This can change the motivation. This can change my bad. I lost my place. This can change the motivation can be changed by this phone, so we are not really aware of what is motivating the increase in walking.
In the original study, overall, the intervention package produced an increase in total daily exercise. The goal was to decrease cell phone and internet usage for adolescents. A lifestyle change was noted in this project. The adolescent continued to engage in physical exercise after the study ended. It was interesting that the internet wasn't a powerful enough reinforcer. A phone had to be brought as a reinforcer. The study was very promising in decreasing media usage. Using the right reinforcers, it was possible to decrease media usage and increase physical exercise. The participant had a steady decline in internet usage in all phases of the study. The rise in obesity within the last 20 years has caused health organizations and businesses to search for a solution using different strategies such as behavior analysis. Physical activity can aid in the prevention of diseases. Fitzpatrick et al. States obesity is a condition affecting 34% of Americans. The CDC, a National Center for Health Statistics, 2007. The effects of obesity result in over 300,000 premature deaths per year. Direct health costs for obesity-related diseases exceed $90 billion annually. CDC, 2006. A significant proportion of diabetes and cardiovascular disease can be attributed to obesity, secondary to inactive lifestyles and unhealthy diets. Obesity sets many Americans on a metabolic course towards hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and death. Exercise may prevent obesity and that metabolic cascade. The implications of exercise for overweight and obese individuals are significant and require consideration of decisional balance, a process by which one weighs the pros and cons of engaging in a given activity. Those numbers are scary. Obesity needs to be addressed and something needs to be done about it. Obesity ranges are determined by using height and weight to calculate the body mass index, BMI. Increasing activity levels using different schedules of reinforcement are shown to be effective. Starting off with a fixed interval for obese kids and adolescents would be the most appropriate when starting. After they have mastered a fixed interval schedule of reinforcement, then it would be appropriate to switch to a fixed ratio schedule. That way they would never know when they would be getting the reinforcement and it would keep them motivated. Holborn et al. States the benefits of behavioral principles of reinforcement to increase physical activity with obese children have been demonstrated in a recent studies conducted by DeLuca and Holborn. The increase in television and internet usage is on the rise. Brackshaw et al. Did a study on a child who averaged 4 hours of TV watching a day. This increase in watching television, tablet, or any form of electronic for an excessive amount of time is becoming a problem. It is causing children and adolescents to be lazy and not engage in any form of physical exercise, which is why there is an obesity epidemic.
In 2018, a study by Kobach et al. Investigated the activity level of children when an iPad was provided in a gymnasium. With this study, the children were split into two groups, one with iPad that must sit and use the iPad while still given full access to a gym with equipment, and a group without the iPad, which was given all same access to the equipment, just without the iPad. The finding of this article suggests that children with iPads, when the iPad is presented, were more likely to be less active than the children without the access to the iPad.
Okay, I don't know.
I'm done.
Cut you off.
It's okay. I'm done.
Okay.
In 1995, Jason and Johnson conducted a study with a 9-year-old male child with Down syndrome to examine the effects of television watching contingent on physical activity. In the study, the child was a 9-year-old overweight child who spent 4 hours or more watching television. Researchers decided to reduce the television watching and increase physical activity. The study created a contingency for the child. In order to receive television privileges, the child must ride a bicycle. For 15 minutes of riding a bicycle, the child earned 30 minutes of television. The results from the Jason and Johnson 1995 study showed that the child had a decrease in overall television watching and an increase in daily physical activity.
The purpose of the replication portion of this project was to validate the study in the results to see if we could produce life-altering outcomes across age groups.
The participants in the replication study included Sarah, a 31-year-old from Utah, Dante, a 26-year-old from Kentucky, Jane, a 24-year-old from Georgia, Emily, a 24-year-old from Missouri, and Jessica, a 27-year-old from Utah. We chose to participate in this study partially because it was a requirement for our class, but also to help understand and observe the link between motivation and exercising and using our electronic materials. Since our group members did not all have access to the same machines that the original study used, we decided to monitor our exercise by use of either workout equipment, Fitbits, or exercise tracking apps that would tell us the length of time and the distance that we exercised for. Because of the limited abilities of these apps, speed was not included as a factor of the target behavior in our study. We also used individual timers, clocks, and trackers to take track of the amount of time spent either on the phone, television, or internet. The target behavior that we used was walking, and the operational definition of walking is defined as moving 1 foot at a time. The subject will lift 1 foot, extend leg, and then set foot down. The subject must alternate their legs, and the subject may or may not run. A non-occurrence of this target behavior would be standing in one place or having 1 foot lifted. The onset of this behavior would be taking 3 continuous steps, and the offset of this behavior would be discontinuing walking or standing in one place. Each member was responsible in collecting our own individual data for the study. Participation in the study could be done anywhere the group member felt that they were most comfortable, whether that be at the gym or on a workout device or elsewhere in the community, such as a park or in a neighborhood. Members were allowed a 24-hour period each day to track their engagement in the target behavior to adhere to different time zones, schedules, and preferences. The frequency of the behavior was recorded on a day-to-day basis. The duration of the target behavior was recorded in miles. Once again, the speed of the target behavior was not recorded because of the variety of channels that participants used to exercise and the lack of access to consistent speed tracking devices. The purpose of our baseline behavior was to track engagement in the target behavior without any type of reinforcement. The group tracked the amount of time spent on the internet for recreational usage, which would be used as the reinforcement in the intervention stages. Recreational internet usage could mean a variety of things, such as time on social media sites, time using streaming sites such as Netflix, or other individualized recreational internet usages. Recreational internet usage time was then put on a data chart alongside the amount of target behavior that the individual member engaged in. The frequency of recreational internet usage was recorded on a day-to-day basis. The duration of recreational internet usage was recorded in minutes. The relation to the data collected for the target behavior and the data collected for the reinforcement represents its consequences in a natural setting. The design of our study was baseline to phase 1 to phase 2. Intervention phase 1 lasted from February 6, 2019 to February 19, 2019. This intervention phase included a change in criterion design. Phase 1's criterion design included for every 1 mile walk by participants, they earned 1 hour of recreational internet usage. Intervention phase 2 lasted from February 20th, 2019 to March 6, 2019. For phase 2 of the data collection, for every 1.5 miles walked by participants, they earned 1.5 hours of internet usage. On top of that, for every additional half-mile walked after 1.5 miles during the second phase, participants would be given an additional half hour of internet usage. The consequences of this treatment phase is the decrease in internet usage as well as an increase in exercise.
Our group decided to replicate the monitoring procedures used in the study for our IOA data. The original participant of the data was tracked through the time and speed of the target behavior by the exercise equipment she was using. The frequency of the target behavior was set on a schedule that the participant adhered to. The participant's parents did serve as an observer to study to make sure the participant performed the necessary functions of the study and was safe during the target behavior performance. A research assistant was assigned to quantify the data onto a chart for the parents. Our group decided that the best way to do IOA for the data is replicate the observer used in the study and be monitored by an outside individual, whether it be a family member, roommate, or by other members of the group. To do this, group members will either be visually tracked by the monitor in person to ensure that the data is being accurately collected, or will take pictures of themselves and send them to group members to ensure accurate data collection. For the replication of the study, our group decided that we would only use one data collector. The first data collectors monitored the adherence to the program requirements, data collection for the target behavior, and gave consequences for completing the target behavior. The data collector also implemented the program and monitoring the participants' data collection activities. The data collector and the participants were in regular communication with each other. The data collector verified that activities were completed as specified and reinforcements were rewarded or they were denied.
Our results show similar findings from the original study. Across all participants, there was an overall decrease in non-homework related internet usage from baseline to treatment. One thing that is different is the average media usage from phase 1 to phase 2 did not decrease for most participants in the replication study. Emily is the only participant in the replication study that had a lower average in phase 2 when compared to phase 1 for internet usage. Additionally, we found an overall increase in the number of miles walked from baseline to treatment. These results reflect similar findings from the original study. Jane, Emily, and Dante all increased from baseline to phase 1 to phase 2. Jessica had a slightly different finding, with a phase 1 having a higher average than phase 2. However, she still had an increase from baseline to treatment. Sarah's phase 1 and 2 treatments were the same, but she still had an overall increase from baseline. Sarah's graph, comparatively to the original study, is variable. Sarah had an initial baseline with 7 of the 15 days already above criterion set for each phase. There were no days that Sarah did not meet criterion. The average daily miles Sarah completed in phase 1 was 2.5 miles. Her average daily miles in phase 2 was also 2.5 miles. Sarah's range in phase 1 was 2 miles and 1.5 miles in phase 2. Jessica had several days during baseline that exceeded the criterion set in each phase, with 8 out of the 15 days during baseline above the criterion. Jessica's phase 1 had a daily average of 2.6 miles and a range of 3.5, while phase 2 had a daily average of 2.2 miles and a range of 3. Jessica had 2 days in phase 1 that was below criterion and 3 days below criterion in phase 2. Jane's data similarly reflects the data of the participant in the original study. Baseline shows a relatively low number of miles walked per day, with only 3 days above 0. During phase 1, Jane met criterion for 9 out of 14 days, was above criterion for 4 days, and fell below criterion 1 day. She had an average of 1.1 daily miles during phase 1. Phase 2 shows 11 days at criterion and 4 days below, with a daily average of 1.2 miles. Her range in phases 1 and 2 was 1.5 miles. The results from Emily's data show a baseline most similar to the original study. Emily had 0 miles during baseline. However, during treatment, her walking behavior was variable. Phase 1 shows 4 days at criterion, 2 days below, and 8 days above, with a daily average of 1.8 miles. During phase 2, Emily is at criterion 2 days, below criterion 4 days, and above criterion for 9 days, with a daily average of 1.9 miles. Emily's phases 1 and 2 had a range of 4 miles. Lastly, Dante began with a variable baseline and an average of 0.7 miles. Phase 1 shows Dante having 3 days at criterion, 9 days above and only 2 days below, with a daily average of 1.6 miles. Phase 2 shows 2 days at criterion, 3 days below, and 10 days above criterion, with a daily average of 2.2 miles. Phase 1 had a range of 2.5 miles, and Phase 2 had a range of 2.75 miles.
The motivation of the participants. Because each individual is different, the exact source of motivation to complete physical activity cannot be fully stated. Each individual picked their own motivating factors, whether it be Netflix or social media, which can affect future replications when they go to repeat this study. The design is similar to the original study as the limitations were brought. Individual differences include if the observer was living within the household, as well as the enjoyment of exercise, which can affect the overall motivation to complete this physical activity. Tracking abilities can vary from treadmill to Fitbit due to each device's varying in how they track miles and how they are used.
In conclusion, did it work? The results show that the number of miles increased and the total number of minutes using the internet decreased. This study helped each participant have a healthier lifestyle. Each participant continued to engage in physical exercise. Each participant reported that their internet usage has gone down since the study has ended.